5 Scorpios.
Oh my goodness. Sting! Okay, so we have some astrology questions.
Including my son.
Yes. And Scorpio started yesterday, so your birthday's coming up.
Yeah.
When is it?
29.
Okay. So did everyone see the amazing full moon last night?
I saw the other night.
Okay.
Beautiful.
It
Still,
was huge.
today too.
So it was a full moon in Taurus because the full moon is always on the opposite sign of what sign we are in. And we're in Scorpio, and the opposite sign of Scorpio is Taurus. You got that?
You said the 29.
Yes, it's on.
Yeah, hers is a 29. So, this is how you know. When there is a full moon, if you know what zodiac sign we're in, we're all in Scorpio, it's Halloween time, right? It's in the opposite sign, which is Taurus. And you can always Google, but you have your chart. And what that means is that those qualities are coming out. So yesterday was a full moon in Taurus, all your Scorpio qualities came out.
That's why.
So there were a bunch of witches, and yeah, last night, I don't know if they did that on purpose, but last night was the scare fair, which was very fun and very cool.
Not that.
On the full moon, and, I mean, I thought that was like a cool little thing for me. But, so what question do you have? If you have a lot of planets in one sign, anywhere that you have a cluster, that's called a stellium. And a cluster of planets in any part means that there is a focus of energy in that sector. What house do you have the cluster? No, what house?
Two.
In the second, okay. So your values house, your possessions house. So your 2-8 axis, do you remember how I told you that everything is a pair? This is area. Did I get it this time? Oh my God, is that 12? Okay, so Aniela, second house, she has a lot of Scorpio, okay? That means that it's the 2-8 axis. If you have a lot of stuff in one house or a cluster somewhere, that means there's a lot of energy and a lot of emphasis on that house. So your values and your possessions and things are going to be either tested or questioned, or there's going to be a lot of focus. But it's also the 2-8. Is your 8th house empty, quote unquote? No house is empty, Jen. It looks empty, but there's a load of information in there. You just don't know.
No, it's not.
Your 8th isn't empty. Perfect. So your 2-8 axis is going to be very, very important for you. That's going to be death and rebirth. That's going to be the sex, the taxes, the passion. Good morning. So we're going to see, but it's mainly going to be your values. So your values are tested. So remember when your friend was in the hospital?
Yeah, now that I'm remembering, the moon is in the 8th, and the sun is in the 2nd for me.
Okay, so you have an opposition. We haven't covered that yet, but that's important. That'll make sense of why your parents are. That's basically your dad and your mom. And if they're in opposition, if something is in one house and in the opposite house or something else, those things are playing tug of war. And we know her parents' story, there was a tug of war. So that, but it will also explain when your friend was sick and his parents didn't want to recognize him, how you were so passionate about that, and you were angry, and you were like, that's my best friend, like how can someone do that? Those are your values. They're very, very, very strong values. So you're gonna be tested in the house where you have clusters, okay? Any other questions? And we, like I said, we've already looked at the 5th house cusp, and we'll repeat more and more as I intertwine everything so you'll pick up on it. And I have the posters. So for instance, here's this astrology. These are all of the planets that you have, and there's another poster. We have to ask her if she printed the prostitute one.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get your charts, so. Okay, so today we're going to do gratitude and labyrinths. So, what do I have on the board? It is solved by walking. What does that mean?
But you cannot, you just open some static and you have to move, you have to do something about it.
Of course she would say that. Because she's constantly reaching some goal, okay? So Aniela thinks that you have to keep doing and moving. Okay, what does that mean? What comes up when you read that?
Like kind of like what you said, just moving forward. It doesn't have to be that same goal, but it could also be moving on from something. So if you stay still, from when I read it, what I think of is, staying still in one situation, one problem, or let's say the wrong relationship, and you just stay there because you're like, I'm gonna make it work, I'm gonna make it work. But instead of putting that work into making it work, make that work into moving on and saying, okay, this is here, I need to go here into my future.
Okay, that sounds great, but that's not what we're talking about. So the two of you are in goal mode. Ideas, and you're not supposed to know, that's why I'm giving you. What? She's the brain, she's the strength, she's the mom. I told her I'm just the talent. I had a question this morning, I'm like, I don't know the answer. I don't know anything. I just talk. I used to say I look good, but now I don't even look good.
You still look good.
Okay, so what comes up when you read this? Just throw ideas out there.
The quote on the board, correct?
Yeah.
For me, I feel like it is just going through the motions on anything.
Going through the motions on anything, like
And
anything you're
trusting the
living?
process, like it just saw, like if you stay stagnant, you don't do anything, just standing still, you're not resolving any type of problem or anything. It's just, you just start walking, it's like starting a process. As long as you just start and keep on trying to fix the problem.
Okay, so you guys are saying pretty much the same thing. What else? That you have to move? Okay.
My brain is fried.
What was that?
My brain is fried.
Okay. Gigi,
Probably agree with what he said,
about moving?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought the same thing as he said.
Okay. So, what need did everyone speak from? What are the 4 needs? The validation, absolutely. So where's our poster on needs? So for the new girls, we have 4 unmet needs from childhood. From the moment that you're conceived, you have unmet needs. The need that speaks when we talk, we speak from archetypes, we speak from elements, we speak from the goddess, we speak from unmet needs. Everyone spoke from a validation need. A validation need has to do with movement, okay? And you're not wrong, and obviously he's saying it'll be solved by walking. There's some movement involved, but I'm going to explain what we're doing today and why I put that on the board. So when because we're grown up in the Western world, if this was perhaps something on Eastern philosophy, or perhaps we were in India, they would have a completely different response. Because in the Eastern world, it's about staying still and meditating. But what is interesting is this quote is actually about meditating. So if I give you that piece of information, how does meditating and walking go hand in hand? What's your view of meditation and how does that go with movement? Right? Perfect.
Well, saying it from, with those hints, I would say, now that I see it as a form of connecting, like I'm just, in my head, there's an image when I read that now, after you're saying that, of, it would be me walking barefoot on the, let's say, on the woods and just connecting to earth in my surroundings.
Okay.
So that's, it's more like solved by walking, but it's more like connecting to your surrounding,
Okay.
and being.
So in your case, a
when you're
nature
present.
walk. Okay. Rebecca?
I feel like for example, when you work out, let's say, you're very focused. You're kind of like thinking a lot because you're just focusing on doing what you're doing. You're in that, like, you're in the zone, I guess you could say. So you're in that state of mind of, you're kind of peaceful because you're thinking, you're kind of reflecting on whatever your mind comes to, like you start to think of. So walking is like the same thing. I feel like you moving and doing the actions, you kind of come into tune with yourself.
Okay. Okay. So giving you that hint of meditation and movement now is starting to change. Gigi? Okay. James?
I feel like it's almost the same with what I was trying to say earlier, is that just the start, not the actual movement of it, just the process, like
Okay.
starting the process. So if
And
you
we're
start the
talking to a
process,
Pisces here. For us, it's like, do we need to get out of this hole?
meditation. Start meditation.
I
start
have fun
meditation.
with you because I could
Meditation.
relate
Absolutely. Absolutely.
to the real root of the issues. Is your brain still fried, or did I wake it up? Okay, Jen?
I don't know,
Okay, Aniela?
meditation
Yeah.
and relation to that quote.
It's just related to the energy that we have inside. It's always moving, so.
Okay. So, St. Augustine was referring to labyrinths. I've shared these with you before. We're actually going to do a labyrinth walk today. So this is one example of a labyrinth. Okay, and I have a huge one in the room down the hall, and we're gonna do a cool walk. So what he was getting at was, and it wasn't that any of you are wrong, is that the labyrinth has a way in, and I can't draw the labyrinth. There's a way, and I learned it in my class, but this is gonna be my fake drawing. Okay. So there's a gazillion kinds of labyrinths. The point is that there's one way in and one way out. And there's a center that can represent the center of self. Okay? So when we were speaking at the beginning, everyone was referring to a goal. And that's one of the things that we are so oriented in the West. The goal, the goal, the goal. Up the ladder, we have to achieve a certain GPA, a grade, a job, a relationship, an appearance. We're constantly focused on the goal. And that's actually in contrast to a meditative practice. So someone had mentioned, oh, when you're working out, you're thinking a lot. And we think, in terms of meditation, that we're supposed to clear our thoughts. Well, can we? Has anyone ever had a blank brain?
No.
Right? I wish. So one of the ways that is considered a meditation when we sit in the, in the meditative pose, like Vishnu or like Buddha, is the belief is that the thought comes into your mind, you don't focus on it, you just let it go. Oh, I'm thinking about my bill. Instead of going, oh, the bill, where am I going to get the money? And oh my God, I got to hit up this. That's what we do in thinking. In meditating, in that particular practice, it's, oh, the bill. Oh, a bear. Oh, a turtle. Oh, my feet hurt. And you're supposed to let the thoughts just go, which is very, very hard. With labyrinths, it is, we are in movement. We are actually walking a path that is believed to be our spiritual journey or our life path. And there is actually only one way in and one way out, and there's an actual center, a core. A lot of people call this God, a lot of people call this their soul, a lot of people call this their inner child or their inner life, whatever you want to call it. There's different theories, but this is sort of like the thing with the labyrinth. How nice would it be to know that you can't mess up your life?
That'd be awesome.
Okay? Wouldn't it right? That knowing that no matter where you go, no matter where you land, you are always en route to where you are supposed to be headed. Damn, I could surrender and just be like, woo! But we aren't trained that way. We don't believe that.
Is that synthesized happiness? Is that what that is? When you like something doesn't work out and then you try to like tell yourself that how it worked out is better than what it would have been.
Oh, absolutely right. And then what we say is, oh, this is exactly what needed to happen for
Yes.
me to then, yes.
So that's the synthesized one.
I don't know, is it that what the term is?
I
Where'd you
think
get
so.
that term?
I'm reading.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know who wrote that term. So find out, or let me know who quoted that. Oh, okay, synthesized, okay. So we do that, we brainwash ourselves into believing that what we experienced is exactly what we needed to experience. But what do we know in this classroom?
Everything that we ask for that
That we created it because we feel unresolved issues, we didn't have our needs met, and basically we have to take our story and we have to continuously prove it true.
Yeah.
So one of the things that this cancer, I did not realize until just like last week or 2 weeks ago, maybe last week, how this bald thing has been affecting me. When I had a little bit of the stubble, it wasn't that bad. But when I decided to clean it up because I had patches, I went into major depression. Like I feel I went back. And what is one of the issues that I told you that's in my buckets, that my mom, it was body image. So my mom was so much about body image that this brought up all that stuff that I thought that I had worked through shit. I mean, it's like, okay, I'm at awareness, I'm not anywhere near integration, I am just, so it brought up, and so what we talk about in this class is that everything that happens to us, we create it. Because we need to prove something true. We need to prove we're not good enough. We need to prove we're not worthy. We need to prove we're not pretty enough. We have to prove we're not smart enough. Whatever that is. Whatever our unresolved issue or unmet need is. So you'll hear me say that again and again. So I just wanted to know who said that so I could look up that particular term. But we are constantly challenged with choices. Constantly. Life is just choice. And every choice has a positive and every choice has a negative. There's this quote, and I'm forgetting his name now, that's called the inevitability of choice. It's not a quote, it was written on this Frank, can you Google Frank, artist, Nova Southeastern? He had an exhibit not that long ago. So it was early this year, like around January, February, I was in major distraught mode, and I went to Nova to go look at the art exhibit. And there were these huge canvases, and the art looked like this.
Frank Stella?
Frank Stella, yes. This is what it looked like.
That's my maiden name. It might be a relative.
Oh my God.
I doubt it.
This is what Frank Stella. And when you go into an art exhibit, there is, as you're about to enter to look at the artwork, there's like a descriptor.
Actually, in my house, when you enter my house, you're gonna see paintings like that.
Okay, well, I don't know how a Scorpio can handle that, because a Scorpio wants control and lines, and I know what's next. She's gonna love the labyrinth. A Scorpio can love a labyrinth because you know what's coming. You understand that there's a method to the madness. It's not random. This is random. So you walk in, you see these huge canvases, and you're looking at them, and it conjures up all of this stuff. Isn't this what life looks like? This is what life looks like. What?
Looks about right.
Right? And so it's scary to think the inevitability of choice. Choice causes anxiety, people. anxiety. There's this great book called, and it's actually downstairs, I had Bonnie order it from the library, called The Existentialist Cafe. So you could check it out. And it's a lot of existential stuff, which is what I always talk about in theory. And it talks about choice and the anxiety that choice provokes. So when you have to make a choice, even if it's what you wear, to school, even if it's what you're gonna eat, there is always two options. There is always, I could choose this or I could choose that. We call this cognitive dissonance when you have two bad options to choose from, right? So I walk into that art exhibit and I read this long paragraph and I'm like, the inevitability of choice. This guy captured it so well. Anyone ever been to Germany? Have you guys gone to the Holocaust Museum? Well, if you ever saw the show on Netflix called Sense8, they shoot a lot there. And you walk in and it's low to the ground and you feel like you're like lost in this maze. And you see the people get really distraught as they're walking through, and what the artist was trying to capture was how the people in the Holocaust felt. Like, where do I go? My life is, how do I get out of this? It's like a maze. That's the difference between maze and labyrinths. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So life seems to represent more of a maze. Where do I get in? How do I get out? What do I do? Is there a right or wrong? Whereas the labyrinth has a very clear path. You walk in one way, you walk out the same way. There's no trick, there's no dead ends, and this is supposed to represent life. No dead ends. One way, in and out, meaning you can't screw up. Who likes that one and who likes that one? That's the one we like. When we walk today, you're going to see that each of you is going to go first, whoever goes, and then I'll tell you when the next person and the next person. And you're going to walk on the path. And something so interesting. When you're on the outside, these are called circuits. The little loops. When you're on the outside circuit, you feel furthest from the center. If the center is God or the center is yourself, you're on the outer one, you feel furthest, but really you're actually closer. How many of you have felt that? That you're so far away from your goal, or you're so far away from God, or you're so far away from yourself. Like I feel right now so far away from my true self, and I'm probably the most authentic that I've been. I mean, like I have no hair. Like I am like just as raw as it gets. My mouth is always raw, and you guys know everything on the inside, but now you see my outside. It's like, and I feel as far removed from my core, from my true self, from like what I want to be. But I'm actually closest. So that's one of the big lessons on the labyrinth. That the further you are from this center, you're actually getting closer and closer. So when St. Augustine says it is solved by walking, it is referring to this labyrinth. So this is just one. This is a famous labyrinth pattern called the Chartres Labyrinth. And you find this in the Chartres Labyrinth in France. Every single religion, every single tradition has some sort of a labyrinth. I mean, we're talking from like 500 BC, like years and years ago. They were actually, no one really knows 100% the origin, but it is believed, it goes back to what you were talking about, walking in nature. It's believed that a lot of these came from like the pagans or the goddess worship. Because what happened? In these traditions, we were barefoot, we were in contact with the land, we were listening and following the cycles of nature, and these circuits represent everything in the earth, circular. There are no straight lines in nature. So the circular pattern represents how we think, circular reasoning, or that constant thought that we're rethinking and thinking and thinking. This also represents the brain. If you look at the way that this is sort of sliced, it's the right brain and the left brain. Something happens when you walk the labyrinth in the way that they're patterns, that you're crisscrossing and connecting your left and right brain. So it is something that affects your emotional health, your mental health, your spiritual health, and your physical health. It is an absolute perfect meditative or spiritual practice. So why do I bring this up today? And we're going to do some things on gratitude, and then we'll go and we'll do a gratitude walk. So yesterday I was in my office and someone was asking me about the bachelor's in psychology, and they were asking what can students do, and I was giving them some things. There is a huge movement now in spiritual practices, the New Age movement. People want, meditation and healing and energy work and crystals and all the stuff that I bring into class and teach you guys about. Meditation or meditative walks is something that you guys can do. There is an actual organization called Veriditas, and they train labyrinth, facilitators is what they call it, facilitators. So I was telling Ms. Rapace that I went last year to Houston and I got my facilitator training. You guys can offer meditative walks, and I'm going to explain to you what happens on the labyrinth, and then you're going to experience it. And every walk is different. So it's one of the things that you could do. You do not need to invest in the labyrinth that I have in the next room. But one of the things that I'm hoping to do is offer more walks on campus. I have to ask permission because I think it would be something that would be great for the community. And usually you could charge for the walk, you could do a theme-related walk, or you could just ask for a donation. But it's a way for you to build a clientele and build a practice. So it's something that you could do. And this little paper, and I have a whole box, those are mazes and labyrinths. I want to show you the difference because life is not a maze, it's a labyrinth, so to speak, is that you could do a finger labyrinth. You could actually have your client in a session do a finger labyrinth, and it does the exact same thing as if you were walking the big labyrinth. We're going to walk this labyrinth today. But you could do a finger one. What if you have people that are VA? What if they're in wheelchairs? What if they can't? What if someone just is doing rehab? So what my goal is to try to explain to you and expose you to different things that you could do in a session or in a setting. For instance, if you work at the VA hospital, or if you're working in a rehab facility, or you're working, with children. This is something you can do with children. You can have, children love to play in the labyrinth. So we were setting up, and Amy, who teaches OT, walks in, and I saw her little girl, I could just see it coming out of her. She got so excited. Because how many of you have played parachute? When you were little, you guys would play parachute, and then you sit under, okay, that's what it looks like. So we were getting ready to set it up, and she's like, is that a parachute? And she had just told her students, what was it, she had just read something, it takes 100 times for you to repeat a fact for you to learn it, but if you play while you're learning the fact,
10 times.
It takes 10 times. So we're in essence playing. Children, second chakra. Oh look, and I'm wearing second chakra today. Well, first and second. It's all about play. It's all about getting out of our head. That's why it reflects in a meditation, or it reflects in getting out of your head. One of the things it's said about the labyrinth is that when you walk the labyrinth, anything that happens on the labyrinth is a message. And I want you to think about this, okay? Anything that happens while you're walking on that is a message from your own guidance. That is one of the ways that your guidance talk to you. So each of you is gonna share after what you learned about yourself or what you heard. Some people claim that they see or hear their loved ones talk to them. Some people say that they hear the voice of God. Some people sit in the middle, and you're free to do whatever you want. If you want to sit in the middle and pray, you're going to each